Vanguard!
I'd rather not make this video, but we need to talk about this subject. And you probably already understand what I'm referring to as you see the title of this video. A couple of weeks ago, Maxime Salem of Zazan Vanguard made a video about his issues and his experience with the new Cray Elemental card Zazan from the Premium Collection 2020 set. And with that, he started the hashtag Zazan20 movement. And since then, and even before the video, we saw countless of videos of people explaining their issues, their problems with Zazan, or they showcase different combo videos or insane combo potential that you can do with the card. And basically, a lot of people start showcasing their negativity towards the card. And you probably would assume that I would take the defensive option to the card and explain to you guys why this card isn't a problem, as I did this in the past many times before. Ever when the community or a large portion of the player base start telling a card is overpowered or broken, I come to the conclusion, guys, this is not the case, or it's not really that big of an issue, or it's actually a much better card. We've seen this at the beginning of the reboot, once we got the new Great Nature cards and the Hamskay Ride Chain. A lot of people were saying the Ride Chain was bad. I came to a defense and showcased in the video that they aren't that terrible as a lot of people put them out to be. And then, hold and behold, that year's World Championship player won with Great Nature, and he was using the Hamskay Ride Chain cards. Then a couple of months later, we got Dragonic Overlord the Great. A lot of people were assuming the card was bad because of certain interaction with the card. I came to the conclusion, well, the card might not be as terrible as a lot of people think because of certain reasons. And hold and behold, it was one of the most expensive VRs for the longest of time, and it made Kagero actually pretty good for a while. And then the last good example that I can give you guys is, of course, with the latest Nova Grappler support with Godhand Dragon. A lot of people were saying the card was broken, the whole deck was insane, and we're getting power crept through infinity with Standard. Again, I explained the card is good, yes, but RNG reliant, so probably not as good. And hold and behold, even in the peak of the Axel meta, that deck, or that card, did absolutely nothing. Almost no tops were made, and even with the hybrid deck, which was arguably the best version, almost no real statistics or performance was made with the deck. And the reason why I'm explaining this at the beginning of the video is to showcase that there are some credentials behind the words that I say. Because once I make a dedicated video about a card, I've looked in at all the sides of the card and seen all the possibilities. And there is definitely something there when I say either a card is good or a card is bad. So in this particular situation with Zazan, I have to give it to the community. The card is problematic. This card has some issues, and at the end of the video of Zazan Vanguard, when he made the hashtag Zazan20 or why he wanted to ban the card, he encouraged and called out to other content creators to join him in the movement. And this video is basically me joining in the hashtag Zazan20 movement. But instead of me explaining why this card is problematic in this video, I think it's much better to do this via answering the most common questions concerning the problems with Zazan. Because a lot of people ask certain questions about why is this card a problem, or why is this specific situation issue, and can we not just fix it by doing this or doing that? And those questions I want to answer in this video, so hopefully you have an understanding what the problem is, why we cannot actually fix it, and why the card definitely needs to be banned before this set drops in the English format, or at the very least, once it drops, it gets banned as soon as possible. So the first thing we need to talk about and share with you guys is, of course, the effect and the card Rain Elemental Zazan himself, so you have an understanding of what we're actually talking about. Maybe you aren't familiar with the skill, or maybe you don't know the skill 100% on the top of your head. So let's start with the card itself, and then we dive in all the different segments. So Zazan is a brand new Grade 1 Cray Elemental that is this card, Rain Elemental Zazan. And its problems lies in its skill, as its skill is Auto Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost Soulless 1 and call up to 2 unit cards with no continuous act and auto abilities from your hand to the Rearguard Circle. If you call 2, turn up to 1 face down Storm Elemental Cyclone from your G-Zone, face up, and draw 2 cards. So to explain what this card actually does, it's basically unplace either Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, you Soul Blast 1, and you call 2 vanilla cards, and if you do so, you draw into 2 new cards from the top of your deck, and you can flip 1 Storm Elemental Cyclone, so a G-Zone unit, face up in your G-zone. So you get GB1 active, or at least an extra GB count if you are gonna activate multiple Zazans. And that is something I will go into once we start into other segments of this video. So it's basically an aggressive tool card that doesn't minus you in hand, because you call extra units to the field, but you also draw into the same amount of cards while also getting GB active on your very first turn. That is basically what this card does. That is what this card allows the Cray Elemental deck to do. And that is basically what this card was designed to do for the Cray Elemental vanilla deck. So the deck has some aggressive tempo in the early game because it's a vanilla deck. The deck is supposed to do nothing except for beating down with vanillas, and that's why the Storm Elemental Stride unit can potentially restand those vanillas, so you have some pressure during the late game. If this card was solely made for the Cray Elemental vanilla deck, it probably won't be much of an issue. Yes, it would be a strong deck, but it would have been somewhat of a deck that could be dealt with. The only powerful and problematic thing it possesses is that it can bring those numbers to insane levels, because on the first turn, if you can call a column, that column will probably hit for 30k, which is insanely high, but with how premium is developing, you will get hit in the early game, but because you're getting hit, you get counterblast, and certain decks can really capitalize on getting that counterblast, so that aspect would balance itself out. So with that said, we come to the very first and most important question: what's the issue? What's the problem here? It's a just really good aggressive card for a Cray Elemental deck. Well, if it was only playable in a Cray Elemental deck, then yes. But this card, because it's a Cray Elemental card, can be splashed in any type of deck. And because it just states that it needs to call 2 vanilla cards, not vanilla normal units, it can work with all the triggers that are basically coming out of the V era. And because most decks are running almost only V era triggers, every deck inherently has about 12 to 16 potentially vanilla cards, which is already a very high consistency card, and you can splash in some extra vanilla cards just to make everything work, and you're ready to go with the Zazan splashed engine in whatever deck you're playing. But basically, to explain this in a very simple way, as I know a lot of people that are watching this that play Vanguard also play other card games, and one of the biggest card games is Yu-Gi-Oh! And the best way for me to explain this in one simple sentence to those players is this: Pot of Greed is banned in your game, for obvious reasons. Now imagine a Pot of Greed that allows you to special summon 2 more monsters to the field while also having the draw 2 effect on top of that. And that card is not banned and is at max copies. Yeah, that is how broken Zazan actually is. Sure, there are some differences with how special summoning monsters and calling certain cards to the field in Vanguard has different value, but just in comparison, this is basically the power level of a card we're dealing with, as this card could inherently break the game itself of premium, because it will warp the entire format around this single card. Because the issue is that you don't lose any value out of superior calling, so you can be super aggressive on the early game, and you can just write this card, and you always have to soul because you're right on top of your starter, so you can basically call an entire full board, and then swing in for high massive columns. But as I explained, that in itself isn't the real issue here if it was only for the vanilla deck, for the pure vanilla deck. But because we get GB count, that is where we start to get into problems. Because that allows any other deck from any other clan to then allow to splash in their GB combo plays or their combo potential in this particular deck and then go wham or go nuts. And we've seen many combo videos out there, or people explaining some insane interesting combo that they can do with the Zazan that allows them to OTK, FTK, combo them out, infinite loop them, and all those kinds of crazy things out there. The most important and the most prevalent combo out there is, of course, the Oracle Think Tank Calico combo, where you could potentially set up a 4 crit grade 1 Vanguard that swings in for like 40-50k, and that just FTKs your opponent if they don't have a PG in hand. That is probably the poster combo for the whole Zazan Zero movement, because that was everybody's mind when they thought about, oh, this is a problem card. But that is basically just the tip of the iceberg. That isn't the main issue for Zazan, why it's a problematic issue. And that brings us basically to the second point. Just ban X combo card that makes Zazan OP. And with X combo card, it's basically whatever card that breaks with Zazan himself. And as I explained, we have the Calico combo, and once that combo came to light, everybody was saying, no, Zazan is not the problem, it's Calico, because Calico allows you to search out those new Amaterasu's and then do all those things, and that card should have been banned, that card should have gotten a errata, and that will fix the whole problem. But that's not the underlying issue here. You can never, ever say that you should ban a X card of a combo potential situation where that other card breaks with infinite other potential combo cards. And the problem here is that Zazan breaks a whole plethora of situations, because we have the Calico combination that we've seen firsthand, but we also have the Songster loops that then can suddenly activate on turn 3, which is insane if you cannot activate that. But we also have many more other situations. And a good channel that's highlighted a couple of these problematic combos is Hogaku Card Time, where Toyo explained in multiple videos, week after week, what type of crazy things you could do. He showcased a Aquaforce Odysseus Ripple engine, where you basically abuse the Odysseus card, where you can keep rewriting a Zazan from deck with the whole Odysseus skill. And because Zazan doesn't need to be placed from hand for its skill, you could basically go off via this way, and because you keep flipping multiple cards in your G-Zone, all your vanilla cards will hit for insane numbers on turn 1. Another combo he explained, and this is also something that I experimented with, was the Time Leap combo. If you thought that Time Leap was problematic in a Jira, well, think about Time Leap, that whole combo potential, on the very first turn, and then they can attack for 12 times without using any counterblast, and basically no resources, and while they're Time Leaping and multi-comboing, every single vanilla attack keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So if you do not get a defensive trigger in the very first 2, 3, or 4 attacks, you're probably gonna die that turn. Because the whole issue with this combo is that you get Madam active, you get TikTok active because of one Zazan, but those are probably the less problematic cards here. The main culprit in that particular situation is then suddenly, and I kid you not, Upstream Dragon. Because Upstream Dragon can now generate 2 extra attacks for resolving his skill of getting a 13k beater, because he then calls a grade 1 in rest from deck. Now you can call Zazan, and because Zazan allows you to call 2 new vanillas from hand, you can do that mid-battle and you call them as stand, which basically gives you 2 more extra attacks. And that is what's breaking the Zazan with Time Leap, and that's then Upstream. But Upstream himself is nowhere near a problematic card. It's Zazan that makes Upstream broken. It's Zazan that makes Calico broken. It's Zazan that makes Odysseus broken. Do you see a pattern here? It's Zazan that breaks cards. And you cannot ban cards that are getting broken by a certain card. And other card games have experienced this before. I've thrown on Twitter many examples, like that Yu-Gi-Oh had the Firewall situation, where Firewall was breaking multiple combos and was basically the source of many FTKs, and Konami didn't address that, and they just banned cards around Firewall for multiple ban lists until they finally banned Firewall. And I'm aware that there are different situations, but that's the main scenario what I have experienced or what I've first-handedly seen. But I know that there are many other situations for different card games that went through this particular issue. So that's why Zazan is definitely the problem card here, not some other card. You need to understand that. If it was only one combo, then we can say maybe it was the other card. If Calico was the only card that broke Zazan, then maybe Calico should have been banned or rather whatsoever. But it's not Calico. That's something you need to understand here. Now that we know that Zazan is definitely a problem card, we get this simple question: why not just limit the card? Why not put it to 2 or maybe to 1? Well, this is something that other card games already went through, and a good example is Yu-Gi-Oh, because Yu-Gi-Oh is a much older card game and they have a ban list for as longer than that Vanguard even existed. So they have experience with handling banning cards or not banning cards or limiting cards, and I know the Firewall example is quite fresh, but a company does make mistakes, but the rules that they make for banning certain cards or limiting certain cards is very simple and it makes sense. And you can say, sure, you can limit Zazan to 1 or to 2, But the problem is, you are actually making the problem worse in some sense. Yes, the decks will get less consistent, which would make certain people drop the deck. Because if you are a competitive player, you want to play as competitive deck as possible, or at least as much consistent deck, which basically translates in competitivity. And you will then decide to maybe drop Zazan because it's less consistent. That is definitely a thing that will happen. However, being more or less prevalent in a meta environment isn't the only reason why you should ban a card. Yes, if the deck is performing like 80, 90, 100% of the decks, or let's say maybe 55, it should get some kind of hit. That's definitely the case. But you should also ban cards that are just problematic for the game as an experience. Because if you go to a tournament and somebody is playing a deck that has one particular card that can only be run at a 2-off or maybe a 1-off. Let's say a 1-off, because if Zazan is limited to 1, this becomes even more of an issue. If a card can only be run at a 1-off, and if that player draws into that card on the right time, or at least early enough, they would definitely win the game. What would you experience as the opponent that basically went there and just saw that the opponent just top decked that 1-off card that 100% would allow him to win the game, and he did that, won the game, and you just basically lost because he just had a 1 in 50 chance to automatically win the game? That is a scenario where you would definitely feel robbed or was not enjoyable. You did not like that experience because you didn't have the chance to play the game, or you just felt like, I only lost because he definitely had a 1 in 50 chance to win. It's not like triggers like, oh, he got a double crit or he got double trigger. It was literally him drawn into that 1-off card and won the game of that card. That is a scenario which we would create if we limit Zazan to a 1-off or a 2-off. Because Zazan itself is such a powerful card. If you get that card, you would basically automatically win the game. Of course, if you get it early enough, but it will happen in certain situations, and those people that experience that would definitely have a bad experience with the game, which could result in them dropping the game if it happens too often, or it was just such a bad experience in itself. And that is also a reason enough to ban a card outright, because you don't want to have cards in your games that create such a toxic environment or a toxic experience where people might find it unfair or just outright drop the game at all. You do not want to have that scenario happen. So that's why, in my honest opinion, and what I've seen with other card games and how other companies handle these kinds of situations, limiting the card is definitely not the solution here. Because it would make the card less consistent and more people would drop the deck, but those people that are actually facing off against the deck would have even less of an enjoyable experience because it was even more of an RNG experience. Now we get to the whole 50-50 split in the Vanguard community with Standard and Premium, as we get the question, I play Standard. Why should I care? And it's a really good question to ask because, yeah, why should you care if you only play Standard? Why should I care about what happens in Premium or what happens in the Premium format? Well, I need to explain this very carefully, but even if you only play one of the two formats, you should definitely care what happens in the other format. It's not like Magic the Gathering where we have like 20 different formats, so if one format breaks and the player base drops at that format, the other 17, 18, 19 communities don't really feel the loss of those players. In Vanguard, where we only have two formats which have huge dedicated player bases, if one of those two formats breaks, it could be super detrimental to the game. Because there are definitely a surplus of players on the Premium side that mainly play Vanguard because of Premium, but do play Standard so they have more chance of playing the game and they will go to tournaments because it's just more accessible. But at the same time, we also have players in Standard that mainly play Standard but do play Premium at the side because they either like the format but less than Standard, or they have friends that play Premium, or they also want to experience that format as well. That in itself means that if one format breaks, you have a significant group of players that suddenly stop playing, or they just like, screw this game, I'm quitting because my favorite format is not playable, not enjoyable more, and I'm gonna quit. And those players, a certain amount of them also were playing Standard, but because Standard wasn't their main thing, they also will drop Standard. And that means those Standard players will definitely see a decrease in players in their respective format. but because we also lose a very big chunk of players in general, that would hurt the game not only for community-wise, it will hurt them financially, and it will probably hurt this game in event-wise. So there is a chance that maybe BCSs would get less plentiful. We get less BCS because there are less players actually participating in these BCS. We maybe get less events in general. Product releases might get a downgrade. These could all be actual implications of if a format in Vanguard breaks. So you as a player that only plays a X or Y format, you should definitely care about the healthiness of the other format. Even if you do not play it, because those are still players that play the same game that you are playing. So that's why I personally think that even if you play only one of the two formats, you should definitely care about the healthiness of the other format. Because Vanguard is definitely a too small of a game that cannot, and I cannot stress this enough, we cannot afford to lose at least even a sizable chunk of players. Because we are all in this together. And that's just a fact. Okay, so you know now about all the problems that Zazan has, and you know it's a toxic card and you don't want to play it and you don't want to play against it. Well, then we of course have to question, or at least a comment that arises, okay, then we aren't gonna play it in our group. And this is also something that I've seen popping up left, right, and center, and it's a very simple, easy solution for small players that are playing at their locals or playing with a friend group. And yeah, this could definitely be a solution for just casual players. And I should say go right ahead to do that if you really want to enjoy the game. 100%, this is just a good way to do it. But for anybody else that's actually playing on a somewhat competitive level or goes to a local shop tournament or goes to regionals or whatever, this is not a solution. This is impossible. You can definitely say to your friends, well, we are like 90% of all the players in this local, we all decide to not play this card to have a healthier environment. But then you have that one rogue player that doesn't belong to your group that comes to the shop tournament. He packs his Zazan deck because he comes in to win the shop challenge or just the locals, and he wrecks everybody because he's playing the Zazan build that's definitely stronger. That's on the small scale. Then we go scale up to a regional or continentals if they still were a thing, but definitely to worlds or whatever. Then everybody, or at least a big portion of the player base, are playing to compete. So they will play the best potential deck out there, or at least the deck that they feel the most comfortable with, that are going to win the tournament. And most of those players would definitely play a Zazan deck. And that means that this whole fixing the problem is impossible. You cannot facilitate or police this. Even if I, Different Fights, Zazan Vanguard, and all the content creators would say, alright, we go to this regional, all the players that go to the regional, let's decide to not bring a Zazan deck. You will definitely have at least one guy that thinks, I'm gonna win this tournament if I now bring this Zazan deck and I want to win the regional, so I'm gonna bring it. That would always happen. And because somebody would think of that, then others will bring it, and others will bring it, and basically it's all in vain because it would never ever be a thing. The only way that we can address this issue is basically head on. And that basically comes to the last point of this video. And that's basically, this card needs to be banned. Zazan is a toxic card that should not have been created. And I honestly do not understand how this card came to be in this set. And that's something that really, really bugs me. Because this Premium Collection 2020 set got me so excited for Premium. You guys probably know about me. I mainly talk about Standard. I mainly make Standard content and hardly any Premium videos. And the reason for that is that I personally do not enjoy Premium to the certain degree that I enjoy Standard. But in the last couple of months, I was starting to get more and more excited for Premium, and especially I participated in some regionals last year, and I was getting into the feeling of Premium. I was like, alright, I'm starting to enjoy this format, I cannot wait to actually delve into it. Then the Premium Collection 2020 set came around, and we saw the strides, and I was getting really, really excited. We had some minors with, of course, the Murakuma stride, which I didn't really like, but there was one problem. All the other cards were really excited. Then Bushrod basically came to us content creators to reveal new cards, and we saw these insane strides. It was getting super excited. We get hyped about this set. And then at the last couple of days, they revealed these cards. And this basically undermined the entire set that they revealed beforehand. Like, what's the point of all these awesome strides that are now now irrelevant because of Zazan. The only card, or the only stride that actually will see some play, is the Narukami stride, because that stride can abuse the Zazan Cray Elemental engine. And that's the only reason why it's gonna be competitively viable to a certain degree. But all those awesome strides would definitely not be viable in a tournament setting. And that's why I just cannot get over the fact that this card needs to be gone. It's not healthy whatsoever. And if we just ignore the situation, we basically give a signal to Bushiroad that they did a good job. That this card isn't problematic. If we all, for some god no reason, be able to not play this card at any regional, then Bushiroad would never ever see that they made a mistake, and there's a highly likely chance they would do this again. They finally banned cards since last year. They banned Ichikashima, they banned Katrina, which definitely need to be banned, but they definitely also need to be banning this card. This card needs to go, and that's why we need to stand together as not only content creators, we need to stand together as a community, as a player base, that this card needs to go. That's why we definitely need to use the hashtag Zazan20, and I encourage you to watch the video of Maxime Solemn as he also explained how you can deal with this situation. Because he went over his way that you can email Bushiroad and how you can address this, but as he explained in the video, we shouldn't all email them if you do not have clear data. If you haven't experienced this problem and you're just riding the bandwagon, then don't email them. That's an important message here that he also tried to convey. We only should communicate with Bushiroad with the sincere issues. We shouldn't bombard them with random stuff. Like, they're not gonna listen to us if like 1,000 idiots are sending like hateful emails or hateful comments to them, like you fucked up, or you this trash, or you don't know what. There's no way they're gonna listen to us. We need to be very open about it, but at the same time professional, because they are a company and they will listen to us to a certain degree, as they showcase, as Solemn Vanguard showcased in his video, that they are definitely in the talks with people from the community. So if there is anything that you should take away from this video, is that use the hashtag Zazan20 in whatever format you can. On Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, whatever. Use everywhere to spread awareness. Then the second thing is share this video, but not only this video, also share the video of Solemn Vanguard where he went over the initial campaign, where he also explained what we could do and the underlying problem that he has with the cards. Because this is not a story of one YouTuber. This is not a story of one other person. There are so many people that are explaining their issues with this. And a third thing is that basically are adding on top of that second part is go to the description of this video, as I will link multiple videos of different channels that have been talking about this problem, either with combo videos, either with issues they have with the cards, and watch those videos and inform yourself what the problem is. Because if you do not understand what the problem is, you should definitely inform yourself of why Zazan is a problem card for Vanguard, and if we do not address this right now as fast as possible, this could have some really bad consequences for the game. I'm not saying that the game would end or that the Vanguard would lose all its player base. I'm not saying that, but it could definitely have some detrimental impacts for the long run of the game. And we need to be aware of that. And not only us, but Bushiroad as well. So yeah, that was quite a long video, and as I stated in the beginning of the video, it's not a video that I like to make because I rather want to be more uplifting and more positive on the channel. That's why, as I explained at the very beginning, that I tend to be on the opposite side of the argument, that I try to either defend a certain card or say, like, guys, it's not a big problem, the card is not overpowered, everything is still Gucci. I try to be more positive on everything that's happening in the community, unless, of course, it's impossible to do that, what's in the case of this situation with Zazan. And I just hope that you guys will understand that it's definitely an issue that we need to address and we need to talk about it. But at the same time, don't overreact. We need to keep our heads cool. It's still a card game. It's still something that we enjoy. But at the same time, because we enjoy it, we don't want to see it go away or to break or just basically turn into something we don't like. It's just human that we react like this. But with that basically said, yeah, there is not really anything that I'd like to ask you about the comments down below. Like, yeah, you can share the hashtag Zazan20 on this video. But again, share all the information you can about this with everybody. Try to inform people. If they say like, I don't understand what the problem is with Zazan, definitely show them this video or whatever other video that you see in the description down below, because there are definitely inherent problems with this card that we need to address. But with that basically said, I hope you guys enjoyed this less of a positive video but more of an informative video. You could somewhat say of a public service announcement. But I hope you guys don't mind that I did this once, like every in a blue moon. But with that basically said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys hopefully in a positive next one.